was supposed to be the perfect day. Not for me, of course, but for my sister. The one everyone called stunning, magnetic, unforgettable. The one who could say jump and the universe found a trampoline. The venue was decked head to toe in ivory chiffon and baby's breath. A string quartet played some expensive variation of Canon in D, and every guest clutched their programs like it was a Broadway premiere. Whispered compliments floated between rows. She's going to look like royalty. Her vision is impeccable. She deserves the world. I just sat there. Row 6. No bouquet, no maid of honor sash. Just me in navy blue. The color they said would complement but not distract. Then the music paused, just for a moment, and the air shifted. A buzz. Then another. Then dozens. Phones lit up like fireworks. Screens brightened. Fingers scrolled. Someone in the front row gasped audibly. A man shouted, "What the hell?" And a woman next to me whispered, Is this real?" I had almost forgotten what time it was, because I had scheduled that notification weeks ago, down to the exact second. PM. 2 minutes before she planned to walk down the aisle in a $14,000 imported gown, under a handmade arch of roses, surrounded by people who had no idea who she really was. By 4:59 p.m., they would. It wasn't even dramatic the way I did it. No hack, no glitch, just one uploaded folder and a single redirect link embedded in a QR code that had been printed behind every program. Scan for the wedding hashtag. So simple, so clean. I sat perfectly still as the panic set in. People started murmuring names. A bridesmaid's head snapped toward the back. Someone ran toward the dressing suite. The officiant blinked and glanced toward the entry. She never came out. All the while, I sipped my drink like just another confused guest, but in my head, I was hearing her voice again from 12 months ago. That moment at the dress fitting, when she stared straight at me and said, "Don't bleed on my dress. That's real silk, and your little drama isn't the vibe." Back then I walked away, quiet, embarrassed, bleeding. But that was last year. Back when I believed them. Back when I still thought being quiet made me weaker. Now? Now I'd learned how powerful silence could be, and all it took was a little planning. And one click. Waiting for your next instruction. Say, expand next section to proceed. If you grew up with a golden child in your household, you already know. You learn early that standing too close to their spotlight just makes your own shadow longer. You learn to be useful instead of seen, small instead of celebrated. And if you're quiet enough, respectful enough, maybe they'll let you orbit near their world without accusing you of being jealous. That was my sister. Caroline, blonde, bold, the kind of naturally loud that makes everyone listen, even when she's saying nothing of value. She was homecoming queen twice, and didn't even apply for college herself. Her boyfriend's mom, who worked in admissions, fast-tracked her at brunch. She backed her car into our neighbor's mailbox once and convinced me to say I did it, because she had prom photos the next day and couldn't risk community service. She cried, "You'll understand when you love someone too, okay?" And just like that, I believed that sacrificing for her meant love. Every family photo marked the positioning. Caroline center stage, sometimes with her arms open like some Instagram lifestyle coach. Me in the corner, usually cropped out by an aunt's purse. I was the one picking up the wrapping paper after her birthdays, the one handing her tissues before her tantrums turned into scene-stealing episodes. No one meant to ignore me. That's what they'd say. They just didn't notice I was there. When I turned 12, I asked for a sketchbook. I drew quietly every day in the corners of the house where no one had time to yell. At 14, I won a local art contest, and Mom said, "That's cute. Maybe Caroline can use that for her cheer posters." By 16, Caroline had broken 3 phones and gotten 4 new ones. When mine cracked, I was told to use duct tape and not be dramatic. College? I paid for half of it tutoring online late at night, because they could only support one daughter at a time, and Caroline was still figuring herself out spiritually. At family dinners, I was the buffer. They'd ignore me when praising her, laugh when she insulted me. Every joke ended with my name and a punchline. I didn't even mind it for a long time. I learned to survive on scraps of emotional attention. An occasional good job, a nod, a text saying, "Can you review my resume?" I told myself I'd rather be needed than celebrated, because at least it meant I had value. But birthdays hurt the most. For her 30th, we rented a yacht. She cried because the champagne wasn't the brand she wanted. Still, she got custom cupcakes, a Photoshop tribute video, and a Caroline is the Moment backdrop with a flower wall. For mine? A late text from Mom. "Hope your day was okay. Things have just been crazy lately, you know?" That's who I was, the ghost tag-along, the reliable one, the girl who organized events, solved tech issues, and shut up during chaos. But something started shifting a year ago. I don't know. Maybe it was turning 30 with absolutely no one asking what I wanted. Maybe it was watching her throw tantrums over imported napkins, while I worked overtime just to avoid dinner with her. Or maybe it was realizing that being invisible doesn't protect you. Because when Caroline hurt me at that dress, fitting, and I mean truly hurt me, it wasn't an accident. It was second nature, and no one cared. That's the moment the ghost woke up. And ghosts, when they stop haunting themselves, they become very dangerous. Say, expand next section to continue. Caroline didn't ask me to help with the wedding. She just started handing me things. A spreadsheet, a Pinterest board, dry cleaning receipts in glittery envelopes, like it was already carved into stone that I'd be the unpaid intern for her dream day. "You're just so organized," she said one night, balancing a glass of rosé and a $90 bridal planner I technically picked up for her. "Let's play to our strengths, yeah?" I smiled, nodded, added stationary proofs to my growing to-do list. Weeks passed. Then came fittings, tastings, site inspections, none of which were scheduled around my work. If I couldn't make something, she sent voice notes dripping with guilt. "It's just one thing. It takes a village, and you're my person, remember?" I was her person. Her emotional outsource center. The person who returned veil samples. The person who called the venue 3 times to rearrange the table. Layout because her future mother-in-law wanted a better view. The person who fixed her Canva RSVP portal at midnight when her fiancé duplicated the guest list and blamed me for being confusing. And I wasn't even in the wedding. No joke. Not a bridesmaid. Not even a backup flower girl. When I gently asked about it, she rolled her eyes and said, "Let's be real. You're way more helpful behind the scenes. That's where you shine." It stung. But I laughed it off. I always did. Because crying would just make her say I was being dramatic again. Then she emailed me a spreadsheet titled Maid of Honor Duties. Color-coded. Detailed. I opened it and stared for a long time, confused. There was a maid of honor already. Ellie, her best friend from college. The same Ellie who once spilled vodka on me and said, "You're so lucky you're not intimidating." Still, there I was, assigned everything she didn't want to do. Handle RSVP follow-ups, manage vendors' invoices, order favors, steamed dresses, including hers write the thank you speech, which Ellie would read. I wasn't the maid of honor. I was the shadow servant, the invisible event planner who'd be told after the wedding, "We couldn't have done it without you." In an Instagram caption I'd never be tagged in. But I kept going. Because that's what good sisters do, right? I kept going until the dress fitting, the pin, the blood, and her voice, sharp, cold, as she said, "Don't bleed on my dress." That's real silk, and your little drama isn't the vibe. That's when the part of me that always clapped for her went quiet. Because suddenly, I didn't want to cheer anymore. I wanted to wake up. Say expand next section to continue. The shop smelled like roses and starch, sharp, clean, expensive. It was quiet except for the rustle of satin and the occasional ooh from the bridal assistant who clearly wanted to be in Caroline's Instagram story. I stood behind her, gently pulling the zipper on her grown-from-heaven ball gown. It had lace flown in from France and hand-sewn beading, which she reminded me of at every appointment. As I pulled the zipper past the corset line, I felt it. A quick, hot sting on my right side. A sharp prick, then warmth. I flinched. "Hold still," Caroline snapped over her shoulder. "You're tugging weird." I think I just I started, but when I stepped back and looked down, I saw the blood. A long pin had been embedded in one of the dress seams. No one had noticed. It scraped me deep enough to cut through skin, and now the side of my shirt was blooming red. "Oh," the bridal assistant said, a little too brightly. "We'll grab you a tissue." But Caroline just turned slowly, eyeing the blood. Nope, back up," she barked. "Don't you dare touch the dress with that. That gown is worth more than your car." I froze, literally stood still. "I'm bleeding," I said. Like maybe she didn't register that part. The pain was spreading now, not excruciating, but enough. Enough to sit down or step away, or I don't know. Maybe be offered a basic human ounce of empathy. Instead, she rolled her eyes. "God, you're so sensitive. People survive worse things. Just go outside if you need to freak out." Then she laughed. A full-blown snort laugh. The kind she gave when I mispronounced something as a kid. "You're gonna make a scene over a scratch? Don't be so you right now." So me? Humiliated, I turned to find a restroom, shirt clutched awkwardly at my side, and caught my own reflection in the mirror next to the exit. I looked like a prop. A stagehand stumbling into the spotlight, stupid enough to bleed in the middle of someone else's show. I waited 10 minutes in that bathroom. Cleaned the cut with cheap soap and a paper towel. When I came out, no one asked if I was okay. Not Caroline. Not the assistant. Not the friend who came late to take selfies. You ever have that moment where you realize you're bleeding, and they're still asking you to smile? That's when something cracked. Not the kind of crack you hear. The kind that bubbles under your chest, rising with a slow heat you can't put back in the bottle. I didn't argue. Didn't cry. I finished zipping the second dress before quietly walking out, like nothing just broke inside me. But something had. And someday, when they'd all ask what set me off, I'd remember that moment, the sting, the blood, the silence, and that she didn't even say sorry. Say expand next section to continue. I didn't tell anyone right away after it happened. I thought maybe, Caroline would realize how far she'd crossed the line. Maybe I'd wake up to a text, even just a basic, "Hey, sorry you got hurt yesterday." Nothing. Instead, I got a message from Mom 3 days later. One line, "Please don't ruin her special moment over a little prick. You know how sensitive she gets before big events. A little prick." That's how she described it. Not the bleeding, not the humiliation, but my reaction. And suddenly, it wasn't just Caroline treating me like I was an emotional inconvenience. It was the whole system. The whole family politely laying a finger to their lips and shushing any discomfort that might make the golden child squirm. My dad called later that night. Said he'd heard some drama went down at the dress fitting. He chuckled as he said it. Chuckled. "You always did get a little overly tender," he said. "Don't let those wedding jitters get in your head. This is her time to shine. Her time. Everyone's time but mine." It was amazing how fast I went from unpaid wedding planner to liability. I didn't even get asked to the venue tour that weekend and found out from a tagged Instagram story that they'd picked the castle-style place I'd put on the short list. I had filled out the inquiry form. I even created the custom PDF she used to pitch it to her fiancé. No invite. My name wasn't mentioned once. They'd replaced me with a friend of his from work, someone who just vibes better in these types of settings. I stood in my apartment that night, hours after seeing that post, gripping a receipt I found in my kitchen drawer, from a calligraphy artist I'd researched and booked for the invitations. Not only had I done the heavy lifting for every part of this production, but I had access to all of it, and what stunned me wasn't how quickly I got cut out. It was how much I still had. All the logins, the vendor list, the guest spreadsheet she shared with me for safekeeping, the group calendar, with my email still attached as a manager, the QR code I made when she wanted something that feels high-end but clickable. I hadn't just been her helper. I'd been her infrastructure. I was the digital engine behind the Carolina show. I knew the password to the venue portal. I could tell you when the cake tasting was, the name of the florist, the backup photographer in case the main one got sick. Every time she called me dramatic or too much, every time Mom said, "Just let it go," I started seeing it less like rejection and more like opportunity. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I started remembering, and in remembering, I started planning. Because if silence made me forgettable, then maybe planning would make me unignorable. People like Caroline build towers with other people's time. They never notice the bricks beneath their pedestals. Not until one slips. And I was holding more bricks than she realized. So no, I wasn't overreacting, but she'd find out what underestimating looked like soon enough. Say, expand next section to continue. At first I just wanted out. No big speech. No revenge arc. Just a quiet exit no one would notice. Which, let's be honest, was kind of my specialty. I cashed out some PTO and booked a cabin in the mountains, 2 hours from town, where cell service barely existed. It had a fireplace, a clawfoot tub, and silence. The kind of silence you get to choose. Not the kind forced onto you in family rooms or dinner tables where no one asks about your day. I planned to leave the morning before the wedding. No explanation, no text. Just a sorry can't make it email scheduled to send right after check-in. I packed a book I never got to finish. Wine I had been saving for a celebration that never came. My laptop maybe. Maybe not. Mostly I just wanted to disappear. But then Caroline's fiancé messaged me. Hey, she really wants you at the rehearsal dinner. Says it won't feel right without you. Right. That sounded rehearsed. Still, something in me agreed. Maybe I just wanted to see it. To confirm once and for all that I was never supposed to be part of this spotlight. Maybe I wanted to be done on my own terms. So I went. I wish I hadn't. The restaurant was dripping in gold decor and fake intimacy. My name card said Caroline's. Sister and not even my name. I sat between a distant cousin who was live streaming the butter dish and a guy who once dated Caroline for 2 months and still proudly called her his first. Heartbreak. The speeches were long, self-congratulatory, filtered through champagne and stories retold for laughs and likes. And then Caroline stood up. My sister, wrapped in champagne-colored silk, flawless as ever, holding a glass and smiling, like every moment belonged to her. She thanked people, casually skipping past me, before launching into a monologue about love. She laughed when she brought up her past relationships, including the time I introduced her to my ex at a dinner party. A low-level dig at me, wrapped in a faux adorable anecdote. Let's just say my sister's taste is very plain, she giggled, but it gave me a real appreciation for what interesting love looks like. And the table howled. That was it, not the blood. Not being erased from the planning, not the unpaid labor. That smug, cheap laugh at my expense, served up to people who already looked through me like I was a placeholder in a better story. I didn't pick up my drink. I didn't roll my eyes. I smiled. Tight. Controlled. And that's when Plan A disappeared. And something much colder started forming. They had no idea what they'd built. No idea how much I'd touched, edited, routed, scheduled. They still thought I was just helping. But the thing about infrastructure, if someone builds your steps, they also know where your cracks are. So no, I wouldn't be disappearing anymore. Not quietly, at least. People think revenge is all fire and fury, teeth bared, glass shattered. But for me, it started as a spreadsheet. I opened it right after I got home from the rehearsal dinner, still hearing the echo of Caroline's voice laughing about my plain taste. Maybe if they'd just left me alone, let me escape to my mountain cabin, let me be invisible one final time, things could have ended differently. But she wanted me close. Within reach. Just close enough to humiliate, as usual. And what she forgot, what they all forgot, is that when you treat someone like a shadow, you never notice what they're carrying. So I clicked open my inbox. There it was. The original guest list spreadsheet. I'd cleaned it up months ago, added tabs for meal preferences and table assignments. I still had editing access. Then I remembered the QR generator I used for the welcome sign. The idea was mine. Make it feel modern, she'd said. So I'd synced it to the wedding hashtag and RSVP portal. I still had that login too. Photo booth? Synced to a dummy cloud I made for organizing photos. I created a backup in case the couple wanted unfiltered versions later. Guess who that backup email belonged to? The wedding website? I custom built it using one of her emails. But she'd asked me to host it under my old Squarespace trial to avoid billing drama. I was never removed as admin vendor contacts. I had them all. I'd helped write the timelines for the florist, the DJ, the baker, the rental crew. Half of them were listed under my number for execution day coordination. One even called me the practical sister with the clipboard. And then, the crown jewel, the venue. Caroline asked me to handle the initial inquiry and virtual tour. She was in spin class, I think. At the time, the venue required 2 email addresses for booking confirmation. Hers and mine, which she used as the temporary point of contact until further notice. They never followed up to remove me. I searched my inbox. There it was. A portal link. Admin level login. Full access. Seating chart. Editable vendor arrival times. Editable audio-visual setup. Editable bride and groom holding room schedule. Editable. I wasn't hacking. I didn't need to. I just hadn't been forgotten on purpose. She gave me power. She just thought I was too weak to use it. You know what that does to a person? To realize you've been holding the reins the whole time and letting someone else ride your horse while slapping you in the face? I didn't rush anything. I didn't make some evil plan in the Hollywood sense. I plotted like you organize clutter, piece by piece. I saved files that looked boring to most. Invoice drafts, seating backups, program PDFs. I remembered tiny requests she'd dismissed and later relied on. Every version of the wedding logistics touched my hands once, enough to trace a map, enough to rewire it. And because she never thought twice about cutting me out, she never thought once about cleaning up after herself. By the end of the night, I had a folder on my desktop labeled Failsafe, a guest list cross-linked to emails, reception schedule breakdown, venue sweep timeline, .qr code redirect. A simple idea came to me. What if I embedded the folder under something no one would question? A digital scavenger hunt she wanted, to engage the guests. Remember that? She asked me to draft a welcome screen that said, "Scan this to unlock memories, laughter, and secrets." She meant photo booth fun. I kept the line exactly the same. Only now, the secrets unlocked something far more real. I sat there in the blue light of my laptop for a long time. Calm. Not smiling. Just steady. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like the background character. I didn't feel disposable. I didn't feel ashamed for being the one who remembered everything, even when they said those details weren't important. Because now, those details were everything. It started with the title. Before you say I do. I typed those words at 1:04 a.m., lit only by the soft glow of my monitor and the kind of clarity that comes when you finally stop asking for permission to feel angry. That night, I didn't rage. I curated piece by piece. Her texts were still backed up from that week she borrowed my iPad during early planning. Forgot all about the sync. Didn't know iCloud mirrors everything. I never checked until recently. And what I found felt like a sick punchline. She'd been messaging someone named M, long threads with timestamps that overlapped perfectly with when she said she was at spin class or wine tasting or having a clarity walk. I don't want to marry him. I just want the wedding. If I'm going to be miserable, at least let it be in a castle and couture. He's boring, you're exciting. Maybe I'll sneak off during the honeymoon. Delete? No? Screenshot. Crop the fluff. Keep the timestamps. Then came the recordings. I'd been in the car during a vendor call she made on speakerphone. I wasn't even trying to catch anything. I was driving her to pick up calligraphy samples, half forgotten on a random Tuesday. She went off for 10 minutes about how annoying it is that people think they're invited to comment on her design choices. If I wanted their opinions, they'd be on the vision board. Seriously. We've got guests who wear clearance Kohl's and think they understand ivory-themed elegance? Please. I couldn't believe how casually cruel she sounded. She was mocking half the guest list. People she barely knew but expected gifts from. Our grandparents even. I had the audio. I trimmed it, leveled it, uploaded it. Then I did something a little darker. Something clever. I made a fake invoice. Simple, believable. It looked like a reimbursement form. You know, the kind used when people split costs for group events. Only this one listed completely petty, made-up charges billed to our family fund. Custom gown steaming fee, $600. Holiday weekend emotional labor surcharge of $400. Task delegation authority fee, $1,200. I wanted them to see it and wonder. Was it real? Was she truly that entitled? Could they even confront her without seeming rude? That's the thing. Whispered out into a glossy room like that wedding, and you don't need to scream to shake the walls. You just need to whisper loud enough to make people squirm. I compiled everything into a clean, well-designed Dropbox folder. No chaos. Just receipts. Literally. I added a few aesthetic touches to the layout. A slick title panel. A message. Weddings celebrate truth. Before you say I do, here's what you might want to know. I linked the Dropbox to the QR redirect I still controlled. The one printed all over the ceremony programs with their cutesy font saying, "Scan for a digital guest book." Then I set it to go live at 4:58 p.m., 4 minutes before the ceremony, right after everyone had taken their seats. Right before she walked down the aisle, that pocket of time where anticipation turns into stillness. The sacred breath before applause. I made sure every detail was seamless. Nothing shady, nothing traceable back through spite alone. Every file was edited for tone, truth, and just enough ambiguity to make confrontation impossible without embarrassment. I double-checked the URL, set the timer, saved access redundancies, just in case. And when it was all done, I closed the tab slowly, clicked off the light, put on a coat, went to the hotel bar 3 floors down, and I ordered a mimosa, because revenge doesn't always arrive in flames. Sometimes it wears lipstick and says, "Nothing for me, thanks. I just want something sweet before the show." The ceremony was set to begin at precisely 5:10 p.m. Caroline insisted on timing the walk to the second, because, as she put it, true elegance is punctual. At 4:55 p.m., the guests were settled. A soft hum of cello drifted over the courtyard. Even the air felt curated. Expensive, crisp, perfumed with imported freesia. I sat somewhere in the back third, far enough from the aisle to be forgettable, close enough to watch the wreckage unfold. A seat without a name card, just how they liked me. Present, but not announced. From where I sat, I could see the flower girls fidgeting near the hedged archway entrance. One motioned to peek behind the bridal door. Her mother gently pulled her back. Coordinators adjusted earpieces. The harpist set the final note. Caroline stood just behind the grand doors, veil positioned by 2 attendants. Her gown's train spilled like ivory water behind her. She looked like exactly what she always wanted to be. The moment before it all unraveled. At 4:58 p.m., exactly on schedule, the first phone buzzed. Then another. A twitch of murmuring began, so faint it felt like wind. It grew louder, sharper. Someone whispered, "Is this part of the ceremony?" A teen in the row ahead of me pulled out an iPad and frowned. People began scrolling, paused, leaned toward their neighbors. One woman said, "Wait, is that Caroline?" Then a ripple, like a silent wave of nervous laughter, tight gasps, and oh my gods. Grandma's phone clattered as she fumbled it mid-swipe. No one rose. No music resumed. The officiant, a soft-spoken man with a leather-bound script, looked up and down the aisle, waiting for a cue that never came. He cleared his throat, stepped forward, then hesitated again. All the while, I sipped water and kept my eyes on my lap. Waited. Pretended to be confused, too. A distant shout broke the silence. From the side near the tent flap, one of Caroline's bridesmaids came running toward the aisle, heels clicking like gunfire on stone. She whispered frantically to a coordinator, holding up her phone. After a few nods, 2 more attendants rushed back toward the dressing suite. The buzz turned into whispers. Whispers into murmurs. Murmurs into full-on nerves hanging sharp in the air. I glanced down at the unfolded program. Right at the part that said, "Scan here to upload your blessing or memory for the bride and groom. Your story is there forever." At least 30 people had their phones up now. 2 were recording something. The page had loaded. The files were visible. No passwords. Just truth. Guests scrolling through screenshots, listening, asking one another silently, "Is this real? Should we tell someone?" But the thing about a performance this grand, Nobody wants to be first to call cut. So they sit, uncomfortable, glued, morbidly curious. Caroline was still waiting behind the doors, veil adjusted, polished to perfection, completely unaware that her fairy tale aisle had turned into a stage she couldn't walk down. And I was just another face in the crowd, the quiet one, the one all their phones were now quietly vindicating. The doors opened late, just by a minute, maybe two, but by then, the damage was already bubbling like boiling water in every row. Caroline stepped forward, radiant, flawless, ready to soak in applause. And for half a second, she got it, the stillness, the eyes locked on her silhouette, the hush before reverence. Then a little boy near the front held up his mom's phone and whispered a question loud enough to slice the moment in half. Is she still marrying him? Even after she said he's boring? The silence broke like glass. A wave of reactions followed, quick glances, stiff laughter, people shuffling in seats. Caroline took 2 more hesitant steps. Her smile faltered. Somewhere in the 4th row, someone didn't bother whispering. I just read the whole folder. Another voice. Is this real? Then she called me cheap. You see that audio clip? Caroline stopped walking, frozen, slightly turned toward the murmuring, her eyes wide. She turned to her bridesmaid, whispered something, then snatched a phone out of someone's hand. The color drained from her face. That's when the scream came. Not theatrical. Not even angry. Just one sharp, guttural no. The kind a person lets out when they realize control has slipped without warning. She spun around, stomped back down the aisle, still screaming, "Turn it off! Take it down! Take it down!" The harpist stopped playing mid-song. Everyone in the garden watched her vanish back through the doors, veil caught on the edge of a hydrangea centerpiece, tearing effortlessly as she passed. Vendors began moving. One of the coordinators was already on her phone, mouthing rapid-fire instructions. The DJ, who'd barely unpacked, started rapping chords, but the show wasn't over. The officiant folded his script, removed his mic, and calmly walked out through the side gate. The florist, an older woman in a sun hat I remembered from the mock-up meeting, looked around, sighed, and began unpinning the arrangements from the pergola she'd hand-wrapped that morning. Guests started to leave quietly, in pairs, in fives. Some left half-drunk champagne glasses on their chairs. One woman stuffed a favor bag into her purse and muttered, "Well, this'll be a story for years." I stood in place, silent, still. My mimosa now slightly watered down. I hadn't said a word. Caroline's perfect day was unraveling, second by second, and the irony was louder than any shout could have been. She built an empire of appearances, and I'd given everyone just enough truth to let it burn itself down. They weren't booing. They weren't fighting. They were leaving. That's what real rejection looks like. It doesn't roll its eyes like she used to. It doesn't scream across dinner tables or stage interventions. It just walks away. And this time, I wasn't the one being left behind. She came outside barefoot, veil gone, eyes wild like something untethered. Her dress trailed in dirt and scattered petals as she stomped toward me, still flushed from whatever screaming match had just happened behind the scenes. People were watching again, not many. Maybe 20 guests lingered, a few vendors, still undecided about packing or pretending nothing had happened. But that didn't stop her. She locked eyes with me like a flame seeking something to burn. "You think this is funny?" she snapped. "You think humiliating me on my wedding day makes you, what, strong? Special?" I didn't flinch. She didn't wait for an answer. This little sabotage. Over what? A stupid pin? A bad joke? Are you really that sensitive? And there it was. That word again, sensitive. As if feeling something was worse than what caused it. I stood slowly, folding my hands in front of me. "No," I said quietly. This wasn't about the pin. Her mouth pressed shut, but her eyes waited for the punchline. I didn't give her one. "You think this was about a scratch? A fitting? You screamed at me, publicly, over a reaction, but never apologized for years of using me like furniture." Her eyebrows arched, but I kept going. You asked me to handle your emails and never said thank you. You made me plan your life around your wants and told our parents I was dramatic when I said it hurt. I was your driver, your buffer, your placeholder. Until you needed a tool, a shield, someone to fix your mistakes. Then suddenly, I mattered again. I felt the crack in my voice before she saw it. 10 years, Caroline. 10 years of holding my breath during your storms and clapping on cue for your spotlight. Her arms crossed, but the confidence was slipping. You don't get it, I said, my voice threading low and steady. This wasn't revenge. It was a mirror. You handed me every piece of this wedding like I didn't matter. I just arranged them into a reflection. She blinked hard. Her lip trembled, barely. She glanced toward the guests still standing off to the side, watching, listening, remembering. You told me I was too quiet. That I'd never make a scene, I whispered. Well, this is what quiet looks like when it finally breaks. And suddenly she looked small, not beautiful, not perfect. Just a girl in a ruined dress with no one clapping anymore. She didn't scream again. She didn't call for help. She just turned around and walked, slowly, back toward the shattered promise of a day that was never truly hers. The wedding was officially canceled by 7:12 p.m., no announcement, no apology, just vendors packing up, centerpieces tossed in boxes, and a faint whisper from someone at the back saying, "Well, that's it then." Nobody clapped. Nobody cried. They just left. Quietly. Curiously. Like people walking out of a movie they didn't understand, but definitely wanted to talk about later. By the next morning, Before You Say I Do had made it to 3 Facebook groups I'd never heard of, one of which was literally called Brides Behaving Badly. Someone posted the whole Dropbox link. One of the audio clips went viral on TikTok, and no one ever figured out where it came from. Her private moment had gone very public. I didn't post anything. I didn't comment. I just watched it spread like smoke from a fire I never had to fan. 2 guests DM'd me that same afternoon. One said, "You're braver than I'll ever be." Another wrote, "I had a feeling something was off. Thank you for showing the rest of us." Funny, how people finally see you once the glitter settles. Even the vendors reached out. The florist messaged me personally and said, "I've done over 300 weddings. Yours was the first time I saw reason win over cosmetics. Whatever that meant, I'll take it." The DJ sent me a Spotify playlist link called For the Quiet Sister. I cried more reading that title than I ever did over the whole situation. As for Caroline, she went full damage control. Of course. First, she posted a vague story about betrayal from within, layered over a stock photo of a broken champagne glass. Then came a privacy violation threat from her new attorney, directed at me. A cease and desist letter citing emotional distress and public defamation. I didn't flinch. Because what she didn't realize, or maybe never cared enough to realize, was that everything used had come from devices she shared, accounts she left open, and files she invited me into. I never accessed anything I wasn't granted by her directly. My fingerprints weren't sneaky. They were sanctioned, and the lawyer? Once I sent a quiet, polite reply with timestamps of file creation and notes about digital consent. He dropped it. She didn't press further. Caroline always liked staying in control, and public lawsuits come with discovery. Better to stay humiliated in private than exposed in a courtroom. That's how people like her think. The family tiptoed around the fallout. No one called me. No one asked for my version of the story. But I heard whispers that I took things too far, that I waited years to destroy her, that I was calculated. Maybe. Or maybe they just couldn't accept that their golden child's wedding collapsed under the weight of her own ego. And I just held the mirror, the best part? I never had to scream. I never threw punches. Never keyed her car or set her gown on fire or ruined her credit card limit. I just handed her the reality she gifted me for a decade. Silence that talked back. That afternoon, I walked the venue one last time while catering rolled out half-eaten. Quiches and someone's aunt chased a toddler through the puddled champagne on the stone tiles. As I stepped over, scattered rose petals and crumpled programs lining the aisle, I thought, She used to make me clean up after every event she threw. But today felt different. Today she could clean up her own damn confetti. I moved into my new place 3 weeks after the wedding. That wasn't. A small sunlit apartment on the edge of the city. Nothing opulent, but it had white walls, hardwood floors, and a tiny balcony where I could set my laptop and drink coffee without anyone asking me to proofread their PowerPoint. I furnished it slowly, piece by piece. A rug that didn't match, shelves I built myself. For the first time, everything I brought inside the door was mine. Not hand-me-downs, not loaners. Mine. I picked up freelance work using the skills Caroline never realized I'd mastered. SEO for wedding planners, web design for overwhelmed executives, calendar and CRM consulting for small businesses that actually said thank you out loud. Turns out being over-organized is a marketable trait when you're not being used as a family office assistant. One of my first paid gigs was redesigning a wedding website for a vegan couple in upstate Vermont. I sent the final invoice one crisp morning with sun pouring through my blinds, clicked send, and felt something so foreign it caught me off guard. Peace. I didn't hear from Caroline again. A part of me expected her to lash out, try to stitch the glitter back onto the corpse of the party she never got. Maybe a documentary-style post on her social channel. A shallow apology wrapped in aesthetic quotes and peony filters. But nothing landed. Maybe because deep down, she knew. Once it fell apart, there was nothing left to control. The silence that followed felt heavy at first, like waiting for a door to slam. But after a while, it started to feel like punctuation, like the kind of quiet that means done. I sipped my coffee that morning and thought about all the ways people tried to frame what I'd done. Too petty. Too dramatic. Too smart for my own good. Too quiet for too long, but none of that mattered now, because I hadn't screamed. I hadn't exploded. I hadn't destroyed anything. I just reflected what was already there. I gave Caroline the one gift she never gave anyone else. A clear look at herself. I didn't smash her day. I whispered into my mug. I just gave her the mirror, and she cracked it on her own. And this new apartment? It was quiet. But not the empty kind. It was the kind of quiet where I could finally hear myself. And that, I realized, was a language I'd been waiting my whole life to learn. I was finishing up a report when my phone buzzed. An old friend from college, someone I hadn't talked to in months, called just to catch up. We chatted a bit. Surface-level laughs, the usual questions about work and life. Then, just as I saved a file to my desktop, she asked it, "So, what actually happened at the wedding?" There was a pause, not dramatic, just long enough to taste the weight of the question in the air. I could have explained it in detail, played prosecutor, spilled every scandalous bite of evidence like I was proud of it. I could have given her the play-by-play, timestamp by timestamp, but I didn't want to. I looked at the inbox on my screen, glowing quietly back at me. I'd just sent another monthly retainer invoice to a client who writes gratitude messages in every email. My cursor hovered over the shut down icon, and I smiled, small, steady. Let's just say I was the best supporting actress for a really long time. Until I chose to rewrite the ending. She laughed softly on the other end. A kind laugh, the kind that said, "I think I get it." We said goodbye. She promised we'd do lunch. I promised to actually follow up this time. Then I closed my laptop, set it aside, and sat back in the quiet. No more applause to chase. No more roles to play. No more spotlight I didn't ask for. Just peace. Am I proud of what I did? Not every second, but do I regret it? Not even a little. Some people mistake silence for submission. Me? I learned silence is just the part before the real story begins. And this one's finally mine.